Is a medium format camera right for you? Should you buy one? If you intend to buy one, how should you proceed? I'll share my own experiences about lenses and workflow. I've been using the Fujifilm GFX series for about 5 years. First up, the GFX100. After the 100S, I have now used the CFX102 for the last year. Revolutionary sensor and 100 megapixels. Let's take a look together. For some, this is a revolutionary camera with its huge sensor and 100 megapixels, plus all the features and new developments. Frankly, it's the same for me. But is this camera right for you, or should you really switch to medium format? What benefits does this huge 100 megapixel camera bring you, and what are its downsides? In this video, we'll try to explore these together. What does a huge 100 megapixel camera bring you, and what are its downsides? In this video, we'll try to explore these together. First of all, for those who don't know, a medium format sensor. The sensor of medium format is approximately 1.5 times larger than that of full frame. And if you scale this down, compared to smaller sensors, just imagine the difference. This huge sensor definitely allows you to capture much more light, giving you the opportunity to create much wider photos. One of them is 16-bit RAW. A lossless RAW file can be around 200 megabytes in size. This sensor also offers you a lot of convenience when it comes to video. You can push the ISO values high. I've edited photos taken in near darkness. This depth gives a near miraculous capability, often unnoticed by clients. Medium format camera lenses can be large because reaching such depth really provides you with, and I say this in quotes, a near miraculous capability. The lenses of medium format cameras can also be a bit large. I say a little because this lens is actually too big for a full frame camera, but for medium format, I think it's more than good enough under today's conditions. Of course, you have to remember that as your sensor gets bigger, your body gets bigger, and as your body gets bigger, your lenses also get bigger. In other words, the weight you have to carry with you or work with starts to increase in size and volume and puts a bit of a strain on you. But of course, when you get the results you want, this becomes an acceptable trade-off. Along with the G-mount lenses, you can also use adapters to work with lenses from older SLRs, especially those lenses. For example, you can also use lenses made for the F-mount, like those from Sigma, Canon, and other brands. Of course, you can experience a bit more data loss with these. Honestly, when I talk about data loss, I'm not saying it's a huge drop-off or anything. You might experience some autofocus losses. Sometimes, you might notice a slowdown in focusing speed. Sometimes, you can experience losses in the corners, but these are not things that can't be fixed. Using this camera is practical with these lenses. Additionally, G-mount lenses, like the GF series, are available. If you have these, using this camera can be much more practical for you in terms of lenses. Besides these lenses, there are also incredible lenses produced under the G-mount, specifically the GF code name, from the GFX series. While some of the lenses might feel a bit outdated, they might need a second version, because the slow autofocus speed here is also influenced by them. So, the faster the lens you work with, the better it will support your autofocus, because they also contribute to the slow autofocus speed here. So, the faster the lens you work with, the more it will support your autofocus. Because it's a huge sensor, and the processing count is really high, you're doing a tough job. If you consider all of this, just 3 to 5 years ago, having even an autofocus feature in medium format was a huge blessing for us. When it comes to Fujifilm or Fujinon's own lenses, they have some incredibly good lenses. One of these lenses is the 20 to 35 millimeters lens that I have in my hand right now. At the same time, if you can actually open it full frame, when you multiply it by 0.79, it reaches a size of around 16 to 28. And f4 is stretched to f2.8. In front of you. This is a huge advantage for you. Another one of the smallest lenses I'm using in this series, aside from the 40 millimeters, which is actually a 50 millimeters, is the 35 to 70 millimeters lens. I think this lens body is really compatible And if you want to use it while traveling outdoors, or if you're just looking to shoot everyday things, or if depth of field isn't super important to you, you can pretty much shoot anything with this lens. Let's talk about film simulations. By now, you've probably heard about Fujifilm's film simulations all around the world. If you haven't heard yet, you can also use their new film simulation called Real Ace, which they introduced about a year ago. Let's talk about file sizes. It offers you a huge data package to create these amazing photos. What does this mean? That means each photo takes up about 210 megabytes of uncompressed space. If you create a JPEG file, that's around 70 megabytes. Each photo will take up about 250 megabytes of space. If you shoot in RAW plus JPEG, this means that approximately 4 photos take up 1 gigabyte of space. This can be a challenge. Need cables, cards, and computers that can handle fast data transfer. Use CFexpress and SD cards at the same time. Start using CFexpress from this machine onward. Now you can use CFexpress and SD cards simultaneously. More specifically, you'll start using CFexpress from this machine onward. That's really nice, because you were really struggling while working with those huge files. It's using CFexpress Type B. At least according to you have the chance to use it at an acceptable price-performance ratio. Even though the buffer rate and speed will vary depending on the card you use, I think it's quite sufficient. Even though it doesn't have the continuous shooting capability of a full-frame camera, it can shoot at 8 frames per second and has the ability to take almost uninterrupted photos in succession. This will definitely help you out in many situations, so it might work well for events like weddings and gatherings, but it could struggle a bit in places that require faster photography, like sports. Along with these, the body has been significantly improved. The beautiful design on the face, reminiscent of a space shuttle, continues with this machine as well. Honestly, the way these buttons are laid out makes your job so much easier, without the need for unnecessary labels like F1S, C1S, or C2S, or even function writing. It's just incredibly convenient. Honestly, right up there with my favorite features are the placement and shapes of these buttons. I think the body design is almost perfect. The material used is really good. You never feel like you're losing grip. It's got a big body, and it has nice ventilation to prevent any sweating in your hands, so you won't have any issues there. In that sense, I think it has an almost perfect body. It'll definitely get the job done for you. In that sense, I think the body is almost perfect. You have a screen that you can tilt upwards for photography, and as you can see, it has an improved screen compared to the previous versions that you can use like this. But when you say, let me shoot a vlog with this, or let me set the camera in front of me like I'm doing now, and work on it, you don't have the chance to turn it back to yourself. You can also support this with a monitor. Now let's talk about the viewfinder. There's an almost perfect viewfinder again. This viewfinder is also detachable, and it can be attached. It's so fast and so practical. When would you like to use this? You can generally use it for video. You might want to use it. It lightens it up a bit. It also has a hot shoe here where you can attach your flash, or if you want to add an extra accessory. I think it's a feature that will definitely be very useful for you on the video side. When it comes to weight, the body is a bit heavy. If you compare it to old DSLRs, we can say that it is almost as heavy as them, but I am very satisfied with the saturation of the body. As you can see here, a full HDMI output has finally arrived. You also have a headphone jack or a microphone input that you can use, and your Type-C port is right here as well. Plus, there's an Ethernet port located right next to the camera. Speaking of the body, they've managed to fit an 8.5 stop IBIS into this big body. It will make it easier for you to take unique shots and capture photos. In fact, even with the new 500mm lens they've just released, you have the chance to take shake-free photos with that huge lens. It might be debatable in video, but Most of the time it will get the job done. Honestly, when you compare it to older versions or other medium format cameras, it's a camera with extremely powerful hardware, highly advanced technology, and really great features. Let's talk about autofocus. Even though it has the best autofocus of any medium format camera ever made, we're learning day by day that it's not an unbeatable situation, but despite that, it offers an autofocus that's almost perfect in its own right. But despite that, it offers an autofocus that's close to perfection in its own right. Now, let's come to the discussion of whether it is a hybrid camera or not, which is also very important to me. Honestly, that's the intention with which I bought this camera. Finally, when using the 100S, Fujifilm offered us a camera that was much more than what was promised. After the 100S, at least when you look at the features on paper, that's really true. But it's not the speed or practicality of camera you'd imagine. It could be more challenging in terms of portability. From a video perspective, the LCD screen's limited articulation compared to Sony cameras complicates video use. Thus, it's somewhat hybrid. With these features and a 100 megapixel sensor, adjust your hybrid camera expectations for now. In that sense, if you're thinking about a hybrid camera, yes, we can say it's somewhat hybrid. Honestly, if you're aiming for features like these and a 100 megapixel sensor, I think you might need to adjust your expectations for a hybrid camera, at least for these years. Let's move on to the video features. 8K 30 FPS. 8K 30 FPS. Perfect, but you won't use it. Because when you're shooting an 8K video, there's a 1.53 crop factor. And on top of that, when it does pixel binding, you can run into some issues in 4K. Yes, as I said, this is not a hybrid camera. This is a medium format, and it doesn't promise you that. Yes, they might market it that way, but your expectations shouldn't be that it's a perfect camera for video. In that sense, it did lower my expectations a bit. Sure, you can capture amazing things, but it's not sustainable. In that sense, it did lower my expectations a bit. Yes, you can shoot great things, but it's not sustainable from my perspective. That's why I've started using separate cameras for photography and video. Besides that, it offers the ability to record up to 60 frames per second in 4K. I think it's pretty good. The format I used the most was 4K at 30 FPS because for static shots or interviews, this can really do the job for you in video. It offers you incredible possibilities in terms of depth and color. After F-Log, there's F-Log 2, and recently with the C version of F-Log, we can say it really offers a broader promise in terms of color correction. GFX100II. Recently, while doing some research on this camera, I read an article that mentioned the top screen could be confusing for some people. Frankly, if the screen of this camera confuses you, do not approach this camera anyway. I can say that once I got used to this screen on the camera, even when it's off, I started looking for this feature on all other cameras. I think it's almost a perfect feature. It works really well. I think it's an almost perfect feature. It works quite well. Also, a cage can traditionally make your video shooting easier. It has the necessary monitor, battery, camera, microphone, etc. You can attach your gear. You can get a cage like this at quite reasonable prices, and it can make your job easier. And during this cage setup, as I just mentioned, you can remove the viewfinder you see in the back. It's really nice to get, or even just imagine, having a camera like this. Using it when you get it is unique because you can create content that you can't do with many cameras. It's the same in photography and in video. Is this camera really ideal for you? If you're thinking about switching to this camera to shoot better videos, consider it carefully. For larger prints, there's little difference between 160 and 25 megapixels. I've made billboard prints with this camera. If you're really dreaming of larger prints, today, little difference exists between 100 megapixels, 60 megapixels, and even sometimes 25 megapixels. Billboard prints using photos from this camera. I've also done billboard prints with a different camera that has 25 megapixels. I've also done billboard prints with the photos I've taken with this camera. But I also did billboard prints with a different camera that has 25 megapixels. So, it might not make much sense to only think about print size. You're definitely right about the depth. You're definitely right about the processing. But I think it's worth considering these things as well. After purchasing the body, you will use it for a few years. And probably after 3 years, Fujifilm or another manufacturer will release a new version. Are you ready for this? Will you want to change this? It's worth keeping these in mind. And I think the most important thing is, will a camera and body, or the cheapest lenses, start at over $1,000, be suitable for you? A decent lens that you might want to get will cost around $2,000 to $3,500. If you compare this with full frames, it might be more beneficial for you. But if you're okay with that and want to change your life in this direction, I think this is the best camera in terms of price-performance ratio that you can get. If you compare this with full frames, it will be more beneficial for you. But if you can accept these, and say you want to change your life in this direction, I think this is by far the best camera you can get in terms of price-performance ratio. Honestly, Fujifilm offering this to us is a rare blessing for us and for photographers. And this has raised the bar even higher. This will continue in the coming years. For example, consider the new medium format and fixed lens GFX series, which is expected to arrive in February 2025, turning into the X100 series. You might think that you will meet a camera with a fixed lens and a size of 100 megapixels, perhaps 50 megapixels. Frankly, with the growth of the format, even the birth of the new camera they have released called Eterna excites us. But I just wanted to remind you of this as someone who's been using it for about a year now. If you've watched the video this far, thank you so much, because I finally had the chance to make a video again after a long time. The next videos are ready, they're coming. This time, we're not making that much of a gap. I hope you liked it and share it. You support the channel by subscribing, say a few nice words, share your thoughts, and all that good stuff. You know what to do. Until we meet again, take care.